Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of The Intern. My name is Jordan Faley, and today we are going to be interviewing a very interesting man who has a bunch of great advice for us here today. So, Mr. Rammel, would you care to give us a little introduction about yourself and your journey to where you're at right now?
Sure. Jordan, my name's Doug Rammel. I am a middle-aged white dude.
Hi there, LinkedIn listeners. Unfortunately, LinkedIn only allows 15-minute video posts to their platform at one time. Therefore, to shorten this section down a little bit and give you guys more content, I'm flashing the background of Mr. Rammel on screen right now, and as you can tell, he is much more than just a middle-aged white dude. Now, we're going to move on to the questions. I appreciate your understanding. Wow, that's amazing. You have really been around and seen a lot of things, and there's a lot to unpack there. And I'd love to dive into any one of those specific experiences to ask you more questions about it. But we've only got 15 minutes for this interview. So, to
Exactly.
kick off the first question, I think it's a great time to ask. I'm sure you've seen a lot of advice be given to young professionals in their fields and probably received a lot of advice in all the fields you've been in. So, what's kind of like a recurring piece of advice that you find is really useless and a lot of young professionals or interns should kind of ignore it and go a different route?
Well, what's interesting is over my career, I probably have about 60 to 70 what I would consider to be interns and or mentorees that I have had, at various places, and I'm still in touch with most of them, which is really kind of cool. It's one of the more entertaining and more rewarding parts of my day. When one of those folks reached back out to me. Um, Obviously now a number of them are in senior positions, throughout their careers. It's not like they need any advice from the old man, but they will fill me in on what's going on with them and their families and their kids. And I've been responsible for two weddings, which is kind of interesting, where I introduced folks who eventually got married. So, which is kind of cool.
Cool.
And I think from there, what I would say is, I people don't understand that you have to find your own path, right? And I think, unfortunately, what we do probably a disservice to most young people. We train folks throughout traditional education to fit into specific roles. It's, specific lines. The square peg and the round hole kind of idea. And in the end, particularly in today's world, it's become even more so over my career. Once upon a time, yeah, you could major in accounting and become an accountant and get your CPA and become a junior or senior assistant, and then
Mhm.
become a senior and then a partner, a junior partner, senior partner, and then retire from an accounting firm. I have a brother-in-law actually who's getting ready to do just that in terms of retiring. He's now the managing partner. But those career paths that people used to fit into and then follow through for their lives just don't exist anymore. And the reason they don't exist anymore is because the world changes too quickly. And your generation, I have two daughters who are roughly your age. You guys are going to see it even more. I've changed careers and jobs multiple times throughout my career. And what's interesting is I was actually the anomaly. I mean, when you talk to most of the people that I graduated from, whether grad school or undergrad or even high school, most of them, they might have changed jobs a couple times, but they certainly didn't change careers. I mean, I've changed industries. I've gone, and some of it's been because of my own natural curiosity and where it's kind of led me to. Some of it's been my connections and the network I've built. Um, but I am not. While I was different for my generation, I'm actually much more representative, I think, of what you're going to find your career to be. And so, what I would really encourage you to do is to find your own path, find your own lane. And I think one of the things that people don't necessarily understand, life's hard. You got to work hard, right? And I'm a big believer in creating your own luck. I have, lots of people have looked into my life and said, man, you've been incredibly lucky, and I have been. But what really has happened is I've worked my ass off pretty much along the way and was prepared for lots of different things. And so what happened was when some door opened, I had already built relationships that allowed me to take advantage of that opportunity. And to the point that I actually saw opportunity that other people didn't. And then my natural ADHD probably kicked in a lot too. So I was constantly looking around at things, right? I have a very hard time. I think the longest I've ever been in one position with one organization has been 4 years. But I was with that same organization, well, that and subsequent organizations, meaning Adidas and Reebok, for almost nine, and had five different jobs in that period of time, with growing staffs and growing responsibilities and all that kind of good stuff. So I saw opportunity that other people didn't see because I was looking. And then I had done the background work and had done the research and had done the preparation, not knowing that that opportunity was going to come, but in the end, ultimately was prepared for that opportunity when others probably weren't.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. And I've actually started to explore that a little bit recently, trying to grow my network and know the right people. And so I guess it really does come down to knowing the right people and going out there and getting the job done in order to make doors open and then walk through them.
Well, one of the funny things I think we don't understand sometimes is that human life, this is going to sound really stupid. Human life is human. It's human first, and
Hmm.
business, right, is a human profession. It is all about connecting and working with other humans. Sometimes you use different tools, and obviously right now everyone's focused on AI, and that's the newest, biggest, whatever you want to call it, but it's just a tool. It's no different than what computers and laptops were when they came in. It really is no different than what cell phones and mobile phones were. People don't realize, um, or people tend to forget. How about I put it that way? Human beings have been doing business since we could rub sticks together and figure out how to try to get something from somebody else, and do work or get the benefit of work without having to do the work ourselves. All right. And so, whether it's the development of currency or whether it's the development of digital currency, they're still a means to an end. They're just a tool. And so, consequently, whether it's paper money or whether it's gold coins or whether it's Bitcoin, they're all the same thing. They operate differently. The rules might be different, but by and large, it's still all human commerce. And all human commerce is done through relationships. It doesn't matter what the commerce is. It doesn't matter what the product is that you're buying or selling or producing. It's all human relationships. And so, understanding how to build your network, understanding how to build relationships with people is absolutely what life's about. And it's even more probably challenging today because we do business around the world. I mean, I've been on 4 calls today, two of them in India and one in Argentina. And I these are business conversations I schedule into my day, and I don't even recognize myself that they're different than the business meeting that I got, coming up here at 12:30 at a local, coffee cafe around the corner from my house. Um, as far as I'm concerned, they're the same conversation. And so it's just folks speak with a little bit of an accent, and I've never physically met them. Right. I've met them through this, just like you.
Hmm.
So I think that's what we have to grow accustomed to. And what I would say to most interns, I think, they think they're trying to learn the skills, the future skills of their career. Yeah, that is absolutely what you're trying to do. But those skills are just tools that allow you to build your network and allowed you to build relationships.
Yeah. So then, with that said, that kind of leads perfectly into my next question of what's a skill that makes an intern irreplaceable to somebody in your position?
That's a great question. I
Mhm.
I mean, I got two. Number one is curiosity. In the end, what I absolutely love is answering questions. And so when you get, matter of fact, what I tend to do when I interview folks to flip things around, because I absolutely hate asking people questions in interviews. I say, okay, what questions you got for me? Because I can learn more from your questions than and what you're thinking about and the quality of your thinking, then I can learn from your answers that you probably have practiced based off of what interview questions you think you're going to get. Right.
Mhm.
So for me, ask tons and tons and tons of questions. The whole point of an internship is it's practice. Right. So you're the whole goal is to come in and learn as much as you possibly can. And the easiest way to learn is to ask lots and lots of questions. And there's no such thing as a dumb question. Now, you can be silly and ask the same question 3 times, in which case I'm going to lose my patience pretty quickly. But if you ask any question, I'm going to answer it legitimately the first time. And then what gets even more impressive is if you're then able to take that information and then ask the next 2 or 3 questions. And that's going to be the second thing I was going to say is initiative. What I found more than anything else, and I really only hire from my interns. Basically, I want to test drive folks as employees, and I do that through internships, and then build and develop talent that way. Um, but I look for people. I want people who solve problems. And I want people who recognize problems even before I tell them it's a problem. I'll give you a great example. One of the earliest things I ever did when I was doing an internship at St. Vincent's Medical Center in Toledo, Ohio, um, Pat Beam, who was my mentor at the time, had me sit in on meetings. Well, when I was sitting in the meetings, I got bored, so I started taking notes, right? And some of it was for my own purpose, but then as soon as the meeting got done, I generated minutes out of the meeting and I sent them to her, right? And she's like, "Oh, Doug, that's incredibly helpful. Thank you." And so then I took those minutes and I then created the agenda for the next follow-up meeting. Here are the follow-ups. Here's what needs to happen. And you probably should schedule this meeting on such and such a date. And she was like, "Oh my God, that's absolutely awesome." Right? She didn't have to tell me to do that. I did that, right? And all I saw that there was a problem. No one was paying attention in the meeting, so no one was going to remember what happened at the meeting, including me. And so I needed to document it. And ultimately, in the end, you got to understand the whole purpose of meetings is to set milestones to get work done. If the
Hmm.
work doesn't get done, the work very seldomly gets done in the meeting. It gets done between meetings. And so by setting up accurate minutes and then accurate agendas and the next date, then everybody knows what the plan is and everyone knows what the deadline is. Otherwise, you end up getting back together 2 weeks later and nothing happened and no one remembers what the hell happened in the last meeting. But all of that came from me. And so I look for that kind of initiative and problem solving in interns. And if you have those 2 things, you will get hired immediately because that there is a absence of those 2 qualities in our population as a whole. And those people who have it are able to go out and do great things.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's very clear that throughout your career you've been professionally curious and very good at solving problems and working hard to climb the ladder. And it's brought you a spectacular amount of success. And so I'd like to peel that back a little bit and
Sure.
ask you, what are some of the kind of unglamorous realities of some of the positions you've held or some of the things that you've achieved that a lot of interns might not be aware of yet prior to stepping into some of those roles?
Well, I'll tell you right now, probably the third piece of advice that I give, particularly to interns, is do the unglamorous stuff. Find the one task that nobody wants to do and go do it, and then figure out a way that it doesn't have to be done going forward. Right?
Mhm.
I was one of the very first things that I did at the Cleveland Clinic when I got there. Um, you're going to chuckle, but that was back when Lotus 123 was the Excel didn't even exist. Lotus 123 was the spreadsheet, and you could start to write what were called macros, which allowed you to basically record keystrokes on the keyboard and write really crude programs that then could self-run basically. And so I set up all of these um, daily macros that allowed me to take a a report that was sent out to the entire hospital by fax machine, which was pretty ridiculous. And I could then input that. I could scan the fax, the content of the fax, into a Lotus 123 spreadsheet. I had macros that ran on the back end of that that then analyzed that data and put it into graphs And then I was able to pass it out to doctors and nurses and leadership and be able to explain, hey, look, this is the trends. These are the business trends of our business. Um,